You're listening to Thinking Outside the Bud, where we speak with entrepreneurs, investors, thought leaders, researchers, advocates, and policymakers who are finding new and exciting ways for cannabis to positively impact business, society, and culture. And now, here is your host, business coach, Bruce Eckfeldt.
Are you a CEO looking to scale your company faster and easier? Check out Thrive Roundtable. Thrive combines a moderated peer group mastermind, expert one-on-one coaching, access to proven growth tools, and a 24/7 support community. Created by Inc. award-winning CEO and certified scaling up business coach Bruce Eckfeldt, Thrive will help you grow your business more quickly and with less drama. For details on the program, visit eckfeldt.com/thrive. That's ECKFELDT.com/thrive.
Welcome, everyone. This is Thinking Outside the Bud. I'm Bruce Eckfeldt. I'm your host. And our guest today is Russ Cersosimo, and he is founder of the Medical Cannabis Society, also an entrepreneur. We're going to talk about his business, Hemp Synergistics, a little bit. I'm excited for this program. I think, that the hemp space is fascinating. I think the medical space is fascinating. We're going to talk a little bit about Russ's background, learn about his insights, what he's doing in the cannabis space. With that, Russ, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Bruce.
So why don't we start with a little bit of your background? I'm always curious to hear how guests kind of got into the cannabis space, what they were doing beforehand. There's always a good story there. Tell us yours.
Yeah, true. So I actually was I had started a tech company out in California in 2009, and I had exposure to cannabis. I remember specifically in 2009 seeing an adult smoking a joint near a kid's playground, and a cop was in a close vicinity enough they could smell it. The world wasn't ending.
Nothing happened.
Right. And when I moved that tech company back to Pittsburgh, and the stigma was still there, and in fact, it was very strong.
Yeah.
2014 came along, and there was a group of mothers that had started pushing legislators for a medical cannabis program in Pennsylvania. Yeah. And my business partner and I teamed up with the moms and went out and really pushed our legislators, worked with the legislators one-on-one. And in fact, it was often that we would get a call and say, hey, look, we need you on the phone call tomorrow. We're going to have these senators and these House reps in the room, and we need to compare and contrast how, the Connecticut program, why it took so long versus the Minnesota program. If you could do that, that'd be great. So that's the kind of stuff we did. We teamed up with the moms, and we put on about 50 events we were part of over the last 3.5-4 years, specific to just educating and leading the industry in Pennsylvania. So I really jumped in when I could, and from there we're successful getting a dispensary permit. And then from there, you kind of see the things that the industry needs. I ended up getting into my software roots and developing software that was going to help researchers tie cannabinoid constituent ratios to patient outcomes over time. So we've been slowly developing that. And just recently, I got into the hemp industry, which we're going to talk about, I guess, coming up. But that's kind of my background in a nutshell. But I did get in because I had specifically an 11-year-old girl that had 10,000 seizures a year. We saw what the oil did for her when she had, and they gave her 14 days before her organs were going to be shut down. Cannabis brought her back to life, and that same girl's now 16, communicating with her mother and speaking for the first time in her life, and it was all because of this plant that was so demonized. So it's nice to see it all come full circle, and that's how I got into it.
Well, a tough story to have to go through, but I think I see a lot of that kind of, people that have seen firsthand, what cannabis, can do applied, in the right way, in the right context for these outcomes. So
it really does the influencing, when someone can see it, what it does, there's not much negotiating you need. It's a matter of people seeing what it does.
Yeah. And fill us in. What is the status of Pennsylvania in terms of cannabis? Medical? This is a medical program?
Yep. So it's medical. In fact, our governor just last week, he brought up the point that he was okay with a recreational program. Right now it's medical. We are in, I believe it's the full first year is passed. And I think the numbers just came in, and they did about 200 million in dispensary sales through August.
Well, and how many dispensary licenses and roughly are they located specific places, or what's the geographic?
I believe there's 60 that are up right now. And the way the state did it is they did a limited model where, they only gave out so many, and it was a competitive application process, and it was, it was everything it was supposed to be, and, but at the end of the day, we're up and running, and we're over that hump, and things are moving.
Yeah. I guess having been involved in that process, what were your surprises or insights in terms of actually getting the legislation, passed?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's interesting working with legislators. years. I had no idea what I didn't know, and there was some good stuff too. Like I remember whenever the bill did get passed, a lot of people were up in arms over the fact that it didn't include flour and it did not include edibles. And one of the senators that worked with us on the bill gave us a wink and said, hey, give it literally 1 year and you're going to see flour come in. We wrote special things in the bill to let that happen. And he was right. A year later, flour just, made it in without any fight. So I got to see kind of how that process all goes. But, at the same time, there are bad sides of politics, and saw that in the application process too. But I mean, at the end of the day, it was the majority positive, and we're up and running. People have medicine, and I'm happy.
Yeah. I think a lot of the people that I've spoken to that have been kind of part of various state legislative processes, it's kind of it's making sausage. Yep. Like you just don't watch it being made, just enjoy the outcome.
Right, exactly. That's exactly right.
It can be a little grisly, and tell us about the research side. I mean, I guess to the extent that you've been involved in helping kind of collect data around this. I mean, I guess there's a general kind of feeling or discussion in the industry that there's a lack of real kind of scientific underpinning or data, studies and things like that. I mean, I guess what have you seen? What data do we have out there?
Because I came from the data realm, I went into this looking for the value. Where's the data at? Where's the stuff that people want? What do they see value in? And it's really tying cannabinoids to an outcome. Yeah. In fact, I had been in touch with researchers at Johns Hopkins that were working on that exact thing, trying to tie cannabinoids to, once it's in someone's bloodstream, how's it affecting them? And the software just wasn't up to speed. They were trying to use things that they had been using for years to do this, but because of the Schedule I and because of the fact that they couldn't touch the patient, there's so many, there's handcuffs in every direction. So basically what we did is we started developing software that utilizing the lab. Pennsylvania was a really neat, it was good because they pushed for a high level of testing. So what we knew as software developers, that there was going to be that kind of machinery, that analytical equipment in the state, and that cannabis was going to have to pass through these 3 different machines to pull out all this different information. And if we could tie that information then to a patient outcome, and that's what we're currently building on the software side now. So what we'll be able to do is hand somebody a phone and say, there's other groups that are doing it, but the big problem is that they're not tying into those actual cannabinoid ratios at a software level. They're asking a human being to type in all these decimal points in regards to cannabinoids and terp ratios. And, it's a great idea and we're almost there, but, that's where you drop people. So I think we're trying to find a really a good solution for the industry. And we're really going down that research path with it. But so far, so good on feedback, and we're doing the right thing. But it's a monster, and there's a reason that people haven't done it yet. It's very difficult. A lot of moving pieces, a lot of different legacy technologies that need pulled together and then standardized, normalized, and spit out to these different applications. So we're getting there, but it's really data. I got up and I spoke at a spectroscopy convention, which, I'm not a scientist. I just get thrown into these things. And
enough to be dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. And exactly. So, knowing that I was going to be in front of all these scientists, I brought my scientist, waiting for that one audience question that says, hey, well, how could you claim all this? There's no research. Yeah. And my response was, well, if there's not enough data, I'll talk to you afterwards. And once you get a chance to sit down with these scientists and let them know, look, we just haven't had a chance to pull this information. You guys like the research, so far we have some anecdotal stuff, and here's, the research that we'll pull together that they've done, but there's no really central database, and they're definitely not teaching this stuff in medical school. They're starting to, talk about it, but they haven't been taught it. So there is that cognitive dissonance in bringing new things in, and unless the data's there, it's hard to buy into it.
Yeah. I mean, do you think, if there were, any kind of big changes you could make to the industry right now, either, at a state or federal level, that would really help with the whole, the ability to collect data, analyze data, bring data to the actual, kind of application process, helping people make decisions, diagnosis, things like that. What do you think are the big hindrances?
Well, it being a Schedule I drug is a big problem. I mean, that's literally it. It's, usually these guys are able to access these drugs, they're able to have a clinical, study that they put together. But because there's, we don't know we don't know what's going to happen yet. Everyone's kind of nervous about it. And, the best way to do it would just be get someone that has a medical card and start to ask them questions. But again, they're one removed from the researchers because there's that medical card involved.
Yeah.
Frustrating.
Yes, it is. And I think that, there's so many just kind of interesting dynamics of this industry because we have this kind of legal conundrum or quagmire that we're in. But, unfortunately, I think it does hurt our ability to use it as a positive medical tool. I mean, it prevents doctors from getting too involved. The whole prescribing, or it's not even a prescribing, the authorized condition, process and actually selecting the product and the products themselves. I mean, we just don't know, we're dealing with an agricultural product that, has a huge amount of variation. Once you start processing it, and then, how these cannabinoids actually interact in different ways, we know so little about really what's going on. Yeah, but we know it has so much potential positive benefits. I mean, we know anecdotally, and we know in these kind of extreme cases, it's clear that it's having this, this positive effect. Interesting. So let's talk a little bit about the hemp side, because I think that, from a business point of view, from an industry point of view, is huge. So I guess maybe just educate the audience a little bit what's going on with hemp, and then why hemp is so interesting.
Yeah. So basically, we had the ability to do a certain amount of things under the 2014 Farm Bill. They then came out with the 2018 Farm Bill that right now has been sent to the White House for approval and changes. So we're kind of working off of the old one. But yeah, I mean, when you look at it, the marijuana industry is kind of limited because of the state rules and because it is a Schedule I. Now, the fact that, hemp can be bought, sold, shipped, grown, it really opens things up. And I like to look at it at a biological and scientific level. We all have an endocannabinoid system, right? So I think the hemp market right now is really going to, obviously I'm not the only one, but it's gonna boom. And that's because people are, they're getting this somehow, whether they hear about it on the news, whether they have a friend, whether they stop by a CBD store, whatever it is, they're getting in their system, and all the benefits, even the benefits they would get if they had smoked cannabis, are coming because those other cannabinoids are in there. So, I think the hemp industry is going to be huge because the limitations aren't there. And we all still have an endocannabinoid system. I think the last statistic I read is that 7% of the country's on some sort of CBD or hemp product.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've seen it at the malls and everything. Everyone's advertising CBD products.
And when I look at it, it's like saying, hey, magnesium is now available. Go ahead and get it. And people have something that their body needs.
C,
there you go. Yeah. And so you're getting all this good stuff that's happening. And we all need it. So eventually everyone's going to get on it somehow. And that's kind of the life cycle I've seen is once they try it, it remedies something, it makes them feel better. I look at my father, he was on Ambien for 20 years and, his doctor told him it was okay. And he is now off Ambien and he's on some sort of CBD product, just, and it does all the same things. Yep. Now we're finding out that CBN in a half amount. So 5 milligrams of CBN is got the same, it does the same thing as Valium or Ambien at 10 milligrams. So, these little things that are coming out as we find them, where do you get that stuff? You get it from hemp. Yeah. And it's not going to be limited. So I think, ultimately then isolating these ingredients if they come up is going to be a big thing that we see in the next couple of years too, because we are finding this stuff out. Yeah.
And just so people understand, the hemp is basically cannabis with a less than 0.3% THC content. It's the same fundamental plant. It's just
really the same, right?
You're just manipulating the THC levels in it so that it falls below this 0.3%. And then now under the farm bills, the 14 and the 18 farm bill, that is now federally legal to grow, to process, to sell products derived from hemp at this point.
Correct. Now, where you're going to see, so I'll use this opportunity to kind of give you an idea, right? So right now they grow the plant and it's got typically a 0.03% THC level or 0.3% THC. What's happening, that's legal, right? So, when we look at the crime lab reports, we're seeing nearly all hemp as it's grown is falling below that 0.3% THC. When we look at what's been extracted, so you take the plant, you run it through a machine. These machines, anybody could get a $200,000 Apex machine. Yep. Anybody, really, it doesn't matter. And it's like operating a commercial washing machine. You turn it on, you put your stuff in, out comes your stuff. Well, for 20 years, let's say back in 1996, when this was legalized in California, you could take Blue Dream, put it into a CO2 extractor as it was, extract the plant material, and then you have Blue Dream oil, right? Well, now that hemp's legal, if you did that same thing with a hemp plant that was legal, meaning it was under the 0.3% THC, but you remove that, just the plant material, you're going to bump that 0.3% body weight to probably 1.3%, 1.5%. And that's what we're seeing at the crime lab. So when we looked at the last 100 lab tests that had come in to the forensic crime lab, 50% of them were well over the THC limit. And what that means is these first wave extractors don't know what they don't know. And what's happening is they're selling the extract to the manufacturers of the food or the manufacturers of the different, nutraceuticals. And these people who thought they did their diligence don't know what they don't know in regard to the testing testing or the science, and they're getting in trouble. So you have a lot of CBD raids where these store owners are getting busted when, they're saying, hey, I did my diligence as a retailer, the same I've done for 30 years. What's different? And it's that the guy that extracted it, that sold it to that guy that made the bottle, that put the label, had no idea that these were going to convert to an illegal substance over time. And I think
so to stay under, within regulation, is that the concentrate has to stay under 0.3% as well.
Correct. And that's where legislation is really going to come down, because there's been kind of this, well, we don't know, or we're not sure, or nobody's looking.
Yeah.
And that's going to change, because what's happening is you see people I have my hands in both industries, and the people in the legal marijuana industry that have gone through all this state regulated, this application process, they put all this money up. Now you have groups that are infringing on that THC based product. So we have a feeling there's going to be a big, there's going to be regulation, obviously. And I think on top of it, there's going to be lawsuits that come down soon that kind of put a hold on the guys that are out there just selling. And I don't want to say snake oil because it works, but we also don't know what's in it. There could be heavy metals, there could be other things, and it's all going to come into the level of testing and what that regulation, says we have to do. And we think, that's where the White House is going to go. They're definitely going to have regulation on what we call decarboxylated product in its actual product form. So THCA that might be legal, once it's heated, it turns to THC, and that's what's happening. So people cook their stuff, they got too much THC. So a lot of regulation.
Yeah. And I guess tell us a little bit about the testing. Why is the testing so difficult, and what are some of the technologies or issues around the testing process that either drive cost or drive complexity?
Yeah, so it's definitely going to drive cost, which I think is why you see a level of testing that's inadequate. So, where broker A might just say that his buyer needs to know if there's a legal amount of THC, they might be okay with just a 11 panel test that shows the THC levels below. But what hemp remediates soil, so it pulls up heavy metals, it pulls up toxins, it does pulls up things that you shouldn't be put into your body. Now that's where secondary and other levels of testing are going to tell you what kind of heavy metals, what kind of pesticides and things of that nature are in that. And people just don't know that they should be looking for. How often you go to a grocery store and just buy tomatoes. You don't even think about, the fact that they were tested or whatever, but, they've gone through a certain level of stuff, be classified organic, and we don't even have that stuff yet out there for this industry. So there's a lot of bad stuff that could be in this. And for instance, you give a seasoned kid, CBD drops, it's going to help, but if it has heavy metal in it, it's going to exacerbate things. So,
and it seems like we've got all this scare right now with the vaping products and these health concerns, and it sounds like mainly that things that are introduced in the actual processing. So it's not only what the plant has in it that you need to take out in order for it to be a safe product, but then actually the processing of that stuff introduces other issues and compounds and things into it. How do you see this ultimately playing out in terms of how the industry gets regulated from the agricultural side, from the processing side, from the actual consumer side?
Okay, so here's what I believe is going to happen, and we kind of have an idea that this is how it's going to go. But CBD managed to slip in as a pharmaceutical product before the USDA took over hemp.
Okay.
So basically, if you isolate CBD, if you remove just that molecule, you're going to probably be in trouble long term, because that is now pharmaceutical. Now, if CBD is in with the rest of the plant, which we would call broad spectrum, it's legal because it's then regulated by USDA as a food extract.
Got it.
So as long as it's there as it was in the plant, and then the THC is gone, no heavy metals and pesticides, that's where it's going to be headed. They got to really watch over that THC. That's going to be the big thing. And then isolates. So they're going to delineate what's a pharmaceutical and then what's a nutraceutical or a food. And I think that's how they're going to delineate. Broad spectrum, as the plant left it, you just remove the THC to stay compliant. But if you remove that CBD and put that on something or in something, I think that's where you open up potential problems.
And then goes in the FDA. So this is the whole thing is, does it fall under the USDA or the FDA in terms of regulatory body? And from a business point of view, then I guess, how do you see people navigating this, or how do you think it's going to structure the market, or, the products we end up seeing from a consumer point of view? Well,
first and foremost, what I think is going to happen is I think the first wave, and I like to delineate the first and the second wave. You had your first waivers that jumped in. I have a feeling a good amount of those are going to get squeezed is a bad word, but they're going to get, the regulation's going to hurt them, let's say.
Yeah, they're going to be unprepared for the regulatory challenges.
And some of those problems are, scaling something like a THC-free product is very difficult. And in fact, no one's, it's not something everybody's doing.
Yeah.
And when you look at the market right now, there's a shortage of THC-free product. But ultimately, that's where I think it's going to go. I think that THC-free broad spectrum is going to be something that we're going to be seeing in food. We're going to see it in nutraceuticals. specifically broad spectrum, but I think we are going to see it in food and nutraceuticals big time. I think that's how people are going to want to take it.
Yeah. And from a market point of view, it seems like it could apply to so many things. I mean, how do you think this is going to break down in terms of, what the products look like, who's taking it for what reasons, brands that develop? I mean, how do you see that?
That's a great question. And it's really all over the board. Again, I'll look back at, I'll refer to magnesium. Everybody needs this in their system, right? Yeah. So when I look at, the elderly community, they're going to need certain type of products. Arthritis is a big thing, topicals, this stuff's working for them. They like to take pills because that's what they've been used to. Mm-hmm. You see the younger generation that relates it more to a marijuana, so they like it in foods. Yeah. So I think there's different ways, and I think people will find their way ultimately. But once they get it in their system, that's up to them. Then figure out how I want to take it. But I think it'll be different products for different people. Yeah.
Any particular markets or segments that you think are have the most growth potential?
I think the elderly. I got to tell you, it's they've been around the longest without cannabinoids in their system, and I think what's happening is when they get this, they're seeing the benefits, and those benefits are things that they have problems with. Pain, arthritis, inflammation. So once they get in their system, that stuff starts to go away. Yeah. So I think elderly is a big one. But really everyone. I look at my parents. I look at friends of them. Like the generation above me, and they're all getting on it. Yeah. So it's I look back at everyone has an endocannabinoid system. Once they could get over the stigma and get it into their system, they're probably going to be putting this in their system for the rest of their life, one way or another. Yeah. I'm curious.
I'm kind of fascinated about the changes to people's kind of social and connections and friends and stuff as they've gotten in the cannabis space. As you kind of got involved in cannabis, did it affect relationships, either family or friends? Tell us a little bit about that.
Common goal and common enemy are two very powerful drivers. So once you start to team up with the cannabis people, they bring you in, and it is a family because we're all fighting for the same thing. You have your stigma, but what I noticed, it was a very clear change when the state went legal. A lot of the people that say, this is bad, once an authoritative figure says it's good, AKA their doctor or their politician, they tend to be open to it. And there was a very clear differentiator in our state as to when that, because you have the news, the news is on constantly talking about it. Yeah. So, and we do a lot of events in different states, and it's really funny. I'll give you a story. So, we did over the course of 3 years, I think we did something like 35 events up to that point in Pennsylvania. And, we did things like destigmatize the word marijuana by just using the word cannabis. Like people don't have any kind of emotional tie to the word cannabis. Yeah. So when we went to West Virginia then, after 3 years of this, I went down to the Marriott. I set up a big event. We spent about 2 weeks getting it all ready. And I went to sign the paperwork, and the lady said, by the way, what is cannabis anyways? And I laughed because it's literally Groundhog Day. It's you could see these programs as they come on. All of a sudden, everyone starts to get educated. People were radically opposed at first, and then they know somebody that it fixed, and they can't be too radically opposed. And then they see it again. They see it, and they start to come around, and it's a matter of time. And that's really how it goes with really any kind of influence. You get hit with radical opposition, with any new idea, and then as you bring in supporting information, people come around. And it seems to be just a life cycle thing as to when the states come on board. Yeah. I like to joke. I have a couple of kids and friends of theirs, their parents, it used to be that, it's like, oh, don't hang out with that guy. He's in the cannabis business. Now they come to me for a job, Right. It's exactly. It's such a shift. It's wild. And I think that's why I think that the national legislation, federal legislation is going to be so fascinating, because I think when that goes, it's going to be a big social and cultural shift in terms of acceptance and adoption, and it's just going to drive really
this market.
At that point, it becomes beer.
Yeah. Well, beer that's good for you.
Right.
It's like not only is it no longer this kind of illicit drug, but it actually has all these health benefits. And interesting. So I'm curious, for people that are kind of interested in getting into the space, or either want to start cannabis business or have businesses that could pivot into cannabis in different ways, what are some of the things that you'd suggest they think about or be aware of or ponder hard before they actually make a move into cannabis?
I would say look for a market need. One of the things I noticed is everybody gets kind of blinded by the gold rush, and they're out there buying the picks and shovels to go find the gold, when they should be looking at what kind of picks and shovels they should be selling. And, I I'll just take hemp as an example. Everybody thinks they're going to become an extractor. Well, there's a lot of science in that. Okay. Yeah. But there's an opportunity in going to these food manufacturers and selling yourself as a cannabis science expert or a formulation expert or someone that can help them bring their product into this world. Yeah. And that's what I'm starting to see is, where people should kind of focus is if you do something good and you could find a way to bridge the gap between, the vanilla world, for lack of a better way to put it, and the cannabis world, find it because there will be a need for you.
Yeah. It's all these ancillary products and services that I've found, in the course of being in the business and doing the podcast that are just fascinating. I mean, you never think about some of these things, but, everything from packaging to consulting services, it's just, there's so many little parts of this industry that, that need professionals, that need experts in different ways that you can come in and, you just you layer in a knowledge, understanding, experience with dealing with the cannabis market. I guess what are some of the things about the market itself? I'm just kind of curious as, people that are coming out of, different industries that are, mature and developed and have, ways of working and cultures and stuff, coming into the cannabis space can be a little jarring. Yeah. What have you noticed?
It's culture shock.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's tough sometimes to shed that. I go into a lot of rooms and I have to explain that we are the adults in the industry, because of the stigma and some of the people that did jump in. Yeah. You get a lot of unsavvy investors. I noticed that in the industry. A lot of people that say, hey, look, I never invested anything, but I see this gold rush and I'm going to throw everything I have into it.
Ooh, as their first investment. Wow.
And it's bad. Yeah, it's bad. That caused a lot of problems. But yeah, it's an interesting industry, it's for sure, all around. But yeah, it's the adults are finally starting to come in the industry. I think as you see things like banking, and the federal regs change and things like that, that's where the people that have been sitting on the sideline, the big boys, I think are going to jump in without any kind of impediments. Because right now, everybody's lawyer and accountant still saying no.
Yeah, just because of the risk. People saying, hey, look, it's not worth the regulatory uncertainty and the market uncertainty here to get into this, right. But that's as those things start to change. Yeah, we're in the middle of kind of the banking reform, and certainly if things start to either deschedule or reschedule from a drug point of view, it is going to dramatically change the environment. I'm curious on the kind of finance side. Have you seen investment coming into the space? What's your sort of perception of capital available for companies that are in cannabis or getting into cannabis and need capital to grow and scale the business? Is it there? Is it not there?
It's everywhere. It's everywhere because you're going to get, you have your people that are passionate about this. That's one thing I know. You have a lot of people that, secretly smoked it or put it in their system, and now they're coming out and they're saying, look, I get it because I get how it made me feel. Yeah. So they will, I don't want to say blindly, but they're the ones that will put in the money. That's what I've noticed. Like at the state level, when you're out raising money with these capital groups, they have tons of money. I don't know that they're doing the right thing with all the time, but the money's there, because it's so exciting. When you look at, any image that shows where we are right now in 2019, and then where the industry is supposed to be by 2030, it is a straight climb to the top. And I think that's exciting for a lot of people. And, you notice it when you're out there, because I got to tell you, it's always difficult to raise money. But with cannabis, it's been interesting because you do get people that jump in somewhat blindly and say, I'm in, I'm just in, I just want to be in, I don't want to miss it. And
well, and I think the danger, one of the things I certainly spend a lot of time doing advising cannabis companies that are looking to raise money is you have to be a little more careful about who you're taking money from, both in terms of where is the money coming from and what is the nature of that money, who are the investors, but also in terms of the savviness, kind of the business and the investor savviness of the money is because there is so much money out there that's just kind of, unexperienced investment dollars, and certainly unexperienced in the cannabis space, that can cause a lot of drama if you don't do it right.
Yeah, hey, I could take it. I can tell you it happened to me. But that, unsavvy investors, it really is it's a whole different ballgame. To anybody out there, don't get an unsavvy investor, I promise.
Yeah. So tell us where your kind of future focus is. What are you most excited about? Where are you spending your time?
What we're focusing on is there's an industry need for THC-free product. That's where it's going to go. That's where regulation is going to take it. So we are focusing. We're putting a 20,000 square foot lab right now in Pittsburgh, and we are going to specialize in really THC-free custom formulations, because where I see everything going is these researchers, they want the data, but then once they have the data, they want to start tweaking the formulations. Yeah. And right now there aren't groups groups doing that. It's very complicated. It requires a very in-depth level of science and people that have done this, in other industries and things, so that's where I see it going. And ultimately what we're going to focus is providing these custom formulations for the pharmaceutical industry, the nutraceutical industry, and the food industry. Those are the three we'll be focusing on.
That's great. And if people want to find out more about you, about the work you're doing, about the companies, what's the best way to get that information?
Yeah, so our nonprofit, the Pennsylvania Medical Cannabis Society, has converted to a national model, and we are at medicalcannabissociety.org. And Hemp Synergistics is up. They could reach me there. It's Russ at hempsynergistics.com is my email address, and our website is hempsynergistics.com. But yeah, feel free to hit me up there.
Great. I'll make sure that those links and the email is in the show notes. People can click and get that. Russ, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time. Great insights for our audience. It's really been a pleasure.
It's been great, Bruce. Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to Thinking Outside the Bud with business coach Bruce Eckfeldt. To find a full list of podcast episodes, download the tools and worksheets, and access other great content, visit the website at thinkingoutsidethebud.com. And don't forget to sign up for the free newsletter at thinkingoutsidethebud.com/newsletter.